Let's take a look.
Some very good news tonight. I can report that all hope is not lost.
He's gonna get the Saul Goodman treatment? Yeah, he will.
In New York. Daniel Penny, acquitted today in a criminal case that never should have been brought by a DA's office that has repeatedly failed to put the safety of New Yorkers ahead of politics. Now, after Penny used a chokehold to restrain menacing lunatic Jordan Neely on a subway.
God, she's so gross, dude. She's so gross.
Car in May 2023, which led to his death, Alvin Bragg's office charged him with second-degree manslaughter. Now, the defendant with no criminal record, a proud Marine vet who stood up when no one else would, gets charged? Yeah. But on Friday, the jury announced it was deadlocked. So, at the behest of Bragg's office, Judge Maxwell T. Wiley directed them to come back after the weekend.
So people should be allowed to kill folks on the subway without even an investigation? That's a new one? No, not really. They said the same thing about Zimmerman. Like, cops, hell, the guy who shot at climate protesters for blocking traffic. But hey, don't speak ill of the CEO. Like, this is it. Violence against poor people, violence against the working class, totally permissible. Violence against, those who are victim to, like, our imperialist footprint across the globe, totally acceptable. If you have even a smidge of ire for those who benefit from the suffering of any of those people, unacceptable. How dare you? How dare you find even joy, even a little bit of jubilation, even if it is, you just laughing in the void, because that's all you can do.
To consider the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide outrageous. But the jury rejected that as well. If anyone is guilty of criminal negligence here, it's the folks like Alvin Bragg and his assistant DA, Daphne Yoran, whose virtue signaling and soft on crime approach have caused enormous pain and suffering to the everyday New Yorkers whose lives matter too.
First of all, sure, but not for going after Daniel Penny. Yeah, Donald Trump doing fraud, 34 counts of fraud that, the citizens of the city, of the state lost out on tax revenue. That's not doing harm to the public. Quite literally, Daniel Penny did harm to someone in the public. He killed a guy.
Bragg, of course, has been humiliated after wasting millions of taxpayer dollars in his crazed criminal prosecution against Donald Trump before, of course, the election night victory. He released a statement today saying he respects the jury's decision, but noted, unfortunately, over the duration of this trial, talented career prosecutors and their family members were besieged with hate and threats on social media, by phone, over email. Simply put, this is unacceptable. Yes, I agree with him. It is completely unacceptable. No one should be threatened. And yet, that's exactly what Jordan Neely did to those subway passengers. By the way, do you know this?
Quite literally, what she's doing is a threat. Like, celebrating a crazy dude, a fucking insane Marine that murdered a guy in cold blood with his bare hands in public in broad fucking daylight on camera, that you're saying this is a good thing and should be celebrated and even encouraged? Because that's the line right now, is that this is a good thing, and the left doesn't want men to be men, doesn't want men to be protectors as they are supposed to be. Like, this is a threat.
All but 2 of the 11 witnesses who testified at trial said Mr. Neely's presence amounted to the scariest experience they'd ever had on a subway. Now, in many
Daniel Penny's murder was the scariest experience, or Jordan Neely having an episode was the scariest experience?
ways, this case's outcome does harken back to Bernie Goetz's acquittal in 1985, because that came during another time when people in New York were feeling increasingly fed up with liberal do-gooders helping violent criminals get off. Most regular people then and now.
Yeah, famously in the mid-'80s, liberal do-gooders were always seeing people, get off on charges. Yeah, had nothing to do with, like, poverty and austerity. Had nothing to do with that.
Just want to return to safety and normalcy. But, of course, the usual racial arsonist reacted to the verdict today. Someone who never rides the subway, by the way, the Reverend Al Sharpton. He put out a statement saying, this verdict represents the blatant legalization of civilian vigilantism. sending a dangerous message that citizens can now take matters into their own hands.
I don't care what Reverend Al Sharpton has to say. Also, I love the term racial arsonist.
If it leads to someone's death. But what all he doesn't get, what Al doesn't get, is that the people of New York have just had it. Maybe the Rev should just brush off, I guess, the crowds that Trump drew in New York and the Bronx, just ignoring that, Madison Square Garden. But he's brushing that off, but he should have paid more attention. Those people know that the danger to America isn't from Trump, it's not from people like Daniel Penny or I
don't know how many of you ride the MTA subway daily, but 99.9% of people are just trying to get from A to B. When you have an unstable, threatening person in the car with you, it definitely feels pretty unsettling. Yeah, it does feel unsettling, but that is not an excuse to kill the person. We said this earlier, like you agree with this. Yes, being around people who are having a mental health episode is unsettling. Yes, you do feel a certain sense of unease, maybe even unsafe. You do. No one's saying that that's invalid, right? Not no one. There are certainly some people who will be like, oh, just let them do their thing. Invoking that sentiment only further justifies people's acceptability towards violence against poor people. If a person feels so unsettled that they decide to kill someone over it, one might wonder who the actual lunatic is. Right. Because again, this was not like we removed him from the person he was supposedly threatening and then restrained him. No, this was, he put him in a chokehold and choked the life out of him for 6 minutes. If you know how to do a fucking rear naked choke, you can tap somebody out, knock them out in literally seconds. It doesn't take much to render someone unconscious, but you should not render someone unconscious. I would find that more acceptable for someone who's drunk at a bar and threatening people than I do for someone who's having a mental health episode. Homeless/poor people isn't the problem, it's healthcare for the people in need. You just said the same thing twice. The reason that they are unhoused and poor is because they don't have healthcare. Jordan Neely's entire background, he had been for a long time suffering from mental health issues. This is the degradation of the public sector not solving these issues, them being eroded, them being, completely eliminated. Yes, society largely failed Neely, I agree. Right. So why do we keep bringing up, people feeling unsafe? You know who feels unsafe? Jordan Neely. But even before he was murdered, Jordan Neely also felt unsafe. One of the aspects of experiencing homelessness is that the constant threat to your safety, both from other people and from the elements, especially from police, is that it wears on your psyche. You develop mental health issues by being exposed to a lack of shelter. The reason I take issue with this chatter of repeating that people feel unsafe is that when we are talking about in any issue, people feeling that their security is at risk, whether it's their financial security, whether it's their personal safety, the person who is at the greatest risk is the one we should focus on. And I'm not saying don't focus on people who are just trying to get to work, because they have issues that need to be addressed too. But in scenarios like this, when it comes to NIMBYs, when it comes to hell, even when we're talking about Israel-Palestine, right? My concerns for, the anxieties of the Israeli public come way after the concerns of those in Palestine. Just like my concerns for people who are on that subway car come way after my concerns for someone like Jordan Neely. That doesn't mean we can't address all these things, but if we keep harping on people feel unsafe around poor people, then we are not fundamentally addressing the real cause of this.